Good evening, everyone. This is Freddie Bartley, Executive Director for Safe and Sound Hillsborough. I am glad to put this information portal and information session together to talk with our public defender, Julianne Holt, State Attorney Andrew Warren, School Board Member Cindy Stewart, and the CEO of the Children's Board, Mrs. Kelly Paris. We know that right now during this COVID-19 issue, there are a lot of you that need answers to certain questions. There are some of you that are coming up with questions left and right. We know that the governor is making some decisions and we're trying to figure out how that's going to affect us. And so we wanted to pull some of our policymakers together just to tell us what their agencies are doing to help people. One, stay safe, and two, stay connected through this crisis that we're going through. So with that, I'll just have one question that I'll kick off. And I guess Kelly Paris, since you're the first one on my screen, we'll have you to start us up. The first question I have is, what is your agency doing to help keep people safe during this COVID-19 crisis? Outline any specific strategies or programs that your office is doing right now.
So, you know, we're a pass-through agency, so we don't actually provide services. We're a funder of services. So we fund about 69 agencies at the community level. Our ASO, which is our administrative services organization that really supports case management in our community, we are looking at, we're fully operational in that area, and case management has really stepped up to the plate, and they are providing case management on people's porches and in their yards. So that has not been disrupted whatsoever. The only disruption in services, there's been a lot of alteration of services, but the only disruption of services are some of the school-based services because the schools are closed. But we have instructed all of our agencies who, first of all, they had to do a plan with their contract this year for emergency services. And so we've instructed all of our agencies that we fund to keep us apprised of what they're doing. And many of them we have instructed to survey their client base and survey them for their basic needs. Do they have, 2 weeks of food? Do they have medication? Do they have, all of those things? And we've started issuing supports or directing them to supports for all of that. Yesterday, we handled some ECHRD money. So we authorized them to use telehealth for their mental health services. Now, we haven't done that with our own ASO providers, but we have done that for ECHRD. So that's an available option for them. So this is a fluid situation, and services are going to change depending on the severity that Hillsborough County suffers. So we're staying on top of it daily. We're having daily meetings with senior management. We are checking on family resource centers and making sure that they're calling all their membership to see what their needs are. So we feel like so far we've been able to handle what's been dealt.
Got it. Ms. Holt, from from the Office of Public Defender, what's your office doing right now to keep people safe, specifically those individuals who are waiting to go to court and some of those individuals at the detention centers or the jails? What's your office doing to keep people safe and stay connected?
Well, as it relates to the court system itself, the criminal justice system, as well as the civil justice system, for the most part right now, the foot traffic inside the courthouse is really at a minimal. The state attorney's office and my office is still working. We have judges that are literally coming in and conducting hearings on a regular basis. We have a full-fledged docket that we run all day long, Monday through Friday, that touches upon different areas. And then on the weekends, we have the detention hearings. So everybody, of course, is practicing the safe social distancing. The county has stepped up its efforts to ensure, as well as the sheriff's office, to ensure that every time we have any type of proceeding, there's a cleaning, a disinfecting, all those types of things. You have a lot of people that are wearing masks. You have a lot of people, obviously, that are using the sanitizers for their hands and things of that sort. Our office has continued to go into the courtroom. We have one lawyer that goes into each of the court proceedings. Then you have another lawyer that's outside in the lobby area just to assist. We do, however, have to have, for instance, in the juvenile arena, even though we can do video detentions for the hearings, you have family members that you need to bring in to some extent. So what we're doing now is we're reaching out in advance to our clients' families and saying, listen, if you can download, whether it be Microsoft Meetings, whether it be Zoom, whether it be Skype, whatever it is that you can actually access, and try to do everything through video for us. We can't just do telephonic, because there has to be a way for the court system to identify people, to actually see faces, to record what's going on, in order to ensure that there's integrity in the system. For our own employees, obviously, we have set up a lot of teleworking, obviously. We have really the mission critical group that has volunteered to stay on board. This started well over 2 weeks ago, and we're pleased to report that it seems to be working well. You have access to the courts. There's no doubt that you have access to the courts. The challenges that we may have are easily overcome by reaching out to our different criminal justice partners. I can't thank the sheriff's office enough, because we literally have access to our clients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in order to ensure things. And Freddie, just to make it even clear, we're not just talking about showing up in court for someone that got arrested. We're literally still moving cases through the system. There are plea negotiations that are ongoing. People are being released from the jail. We've identified individuals that have higher risk in the jail, and we've contacted our counterpart, obviously the state attorney's office, and worked out cases to have those people removed from the system. We have done the same thing with the detention children, because the detention center was getting overpopulated. And so the collaboration continues. We're moving things forward, and we're trying to ensure that everyone's in a safe environment.
Mr. Warren, now we put it to you, not just what your office is doing to in the wake of this pandemic and trying to keep people safe, but specifically those people that are seeking assistance, your victims assistance unit. How are we still providing services to them in this limited mobility space that we're in? And I know that we just had a conversation about the governor's new order. If you can just shed some thought on what's going on right now with respect to your office.
Sure. Well, Ms. Holt did a good job of summarizing how our courts have adjusted to the pandemic to make sure that we're moving forward things that we can move forward while still practicing responsible social distancing. The state attorney's office is largely working remotely. We've cut back with our staff to make sure that we're adjusting to now the reduced demand in the courthouse, as well as social distancing, and to make sure that we're giving our staff the flexibility to be home with their families, especially with the schools closed. It creates a lot of issues for people now that their kids aren't in school during the day. In terms of the caseload that we're handling, we've been anticipating this huge backlog in cases that's going to come up as we're in these reduced operations now. And the idea is to keep the things moving forward that we can and to stop adding to the backlog. So for example, we have hit the pause button on filing a lot of nonviolent misdemeanors. So criminal traffic offenses like driving with a suspended license, trespass, prostitution cases like that are still coming in from law enforcement. We're not even filing charges on them yet, because we need to see how long this goes on, and to avoid creating a backlog in our system that affects our ability to prosecute more serious cases. You had also asked about the governor's orders and what that's affecting. The reality is I don't know, because we've had some conflicting information come out of Tallahassee in the past 24 hours. But the bottom line remains that our elected leaders here, the Hillsborough County Emergency Policy Group, our mayor, our sheriff, the county commissioners who are on it, are trying to do everything they can to promote aggressive and responsible social distancing to flatten the curve. So we are continuing to do that. Whether things are required by law to be done and there's a penalty hanging over your head for failure to comply is kind of besides the point, because our focus is on getting people to understand what they should be doing. And the vast majority of people are willing to do it simply because it's the right thing to do to protect their families and our community. I'm sorry, you'd also asked about victims.
Yep.
With regard to victims, our office is still open. We are continuing to provide support for victims through our Victims Assistance Program, but it's hard because a lot of the services that victims can access are now either closed or operating at reduced capacity. We're really concerned about an increase in domestic violence. Studies have shown that in periods of stress and isolation like we're having now, that you have an increase in domestic violence incidents. So we've been working closely with our community partners, for example, in the domestic violence space, like the Spring of Tampa Bay, to make sure that we're continuing to provide those services and getting people the help that they need from not just the state attorney's office, but also from our community partners.
Awesome. Mrs. Stewart, my kids are driving me crazy. That's the comment that we keep getting from parents all throughout Hillsborough County.
But they are your children.
They are. So this is the comment that we're getting. Tell us what's going on with the school district right now. How long is this online learning going to last? Do we anticipate kids going back to school over the summer? And some things that the school district is doing that parents really need to know.
So I will tell you right now, we are following the Department of Education and the governor's orders, which they seem to be giving us orders in 2-week increments. So we had an order that we were going to come back on April 15th. Obviously, that got changed the other day, and we are now moved to May 1st. I do not see us personally. I do not see that happening. I think this is going to, and I'm not a health professional, but this is going to peak in late April, early May, and I don't see us coming back after we've spent this much time out of school just to come back for a few weeks. So when teachers and parents ask me, what should I do? You prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So you should be preparing for your children to be home for the rest of this year. And if we go back, then that's just a blessing for them to go back and say goodbye to their friends and see their teachers one more time. But for the most part, I think we're most likely going to be closed for the rest of the year. And people need to be prepared for that. So students need to continue working through the e-learning issues that we're having. It's getting better every day. I keep reminding people this is only day 4. This is a huge lift to put 212,000 students from elementary through high school onto a virtual platform and try and get them all, understanding, reading, catching everything. And even as a parent, I will tell you, I've been overwhelmed. I only have 1 child in high school still. And I'm overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that teachers have actually had to put out. We are focusing on do your best. This is not about trying to force a lot of new curriculum or force a lot of new instruction, but just to keep kids engaged. There is no testing that is going to happen this year. So the state has removed all of the test barriers that were supposed to happen. So all of the Florida standard assessments, the FSA that was going to start happening in April and May have all been wiped off the table. There will be no school grades. So those results actually produce school grades. So for example, school XYZ gets a grade of an A, B, C, D, or an F. Those have been taken off the table completely. Promotion for students will be based on the schoolwork that they're doing and a conversation between the parent and the teacher and administration. High school seniors that needed FSA concordant score or concordant scores for 10th grade reading, those have been taken off the table as well as the Algebra 1 EOC, which are all graduation requirements. Those are big things that kids I know were really worried about. The district and most other districts have also removed all of the end of course exams that were supposed to happen. The only exams that I believe may still happen, and I have to confirm this, is the IB exams. And we don't set the rules on those are set internationally. But I have a feeling that they're trying to find a way that kids can do those at home. E-learning is going well. I think for a district this size that has 26,000 employees and 6,000 of those employees being teachers, trying to get teachers who may have never used our system this way to use our system this way and pushing people into this space. We've had 4,000 teachers this week alone that have been trained on some of the virtual options that are out there for them, whether that's using Zoom or GoToMeeting or Microsoft Team or even EDSB. Our elementary teachers are really not very familiar with EDSB. They don't use it very much, and they've had to learn how to reinvent themselves, put things on EDSB and teach then their children, their students, how to get on Zoom and have conferences and have conversations. But for the most part, it's been very positive and very good. I've only seen positive things coming from district employees, from teachers, from parents. And again, take a breath and realize we're only in day 4. We did have a school board meeting on Tuesday. We did give emergency authority to the superintendent to do what he needed to do in this situation, meaning he can purchase or buy the things that are necessary for us to get through this time frame. We are still handing out food twice a day. We have now moved food distribution into actual communities. So buses with food and security and student nutrition people are going now out into communities where they need them and feeding. It's a bag, it has 2 meals and it has lunch and breakfast in it. So I am not sure how much longer that is going to continue. We may move to a twice a week and more of a 2 or 3 days at a time feeding, because I think as this starts to get worse in the next few weeks here, people are going to want to distance themselves from contact with other people. So I anticipate, but again, that comes from the federal government. That's the federal lunch and breakfast program. So we have to follow those guidelines. We continue to hand out devices to students that need them. We have approximately 51,000 that have been distributed already, and I know that we have a large order coming in the end of this week. So as soon as those can be prepped and ready, they'll go out next week to students. Our big issue that we're having is around Wi-Fi connectivity and students being able. We have some pockets that there's really not any good solution down in that Waimama, Ruskin, Riverview area. There's just not service at all. So trying to manage how we get information to those kids. E-learning is happening and it's virtual and it's online, but we also have packets that have been delivered to school. So if families are struggling with trying to get on virtually, know that they can still go and get a paper packet and work through that with their child until they get the ability to go virtual or until we get back to school. So again, we have e-learning support set up, technology support hotlines on our website. We've got mental health support hotlines on our website, and then just general questions. Again, we're anticipating, I think, a very robust summer. And trying to find an opportunity to catch up kids who may get behind during this time. But I anticipate we did talk about that on graduations is also a big question mark right now. Our graduations were supposed to start on the 15th of May. I don't think that that's going to happen. Right now, that timeline is still intact, but we have been looking at options. And some of those options include a potential virtual or moving graduations maybe into July. So that's probably the biggest issue that we have right now, is whether or not we're going to stay closed the rest of the year and what happens with graduations.
Kelly, I'll real quick. So Cindy just explained a lot that the district is doing and to help with the students, but it's the parents also that need that support. And I know that, through the family resource centers that are around the county, there's been some support being provided, but people are worried about their electric, their water, their utility, their childcare costs, their support for their early, their small children. What information can you give to people in the community about your resource centers? And then also, when Mrs. Stewart talked about South County, we know that South County has a big digital divide. Is there anything that the Children's Board is working on, or any partners down in South County that can help these families to help their kids get on?
Enterprising Latinas in South County, we support heavily with funding, and they have established some areas that has connectivity down there. So if the children have devices, then they can, safe distances, but they can congregate 6 feet apart, 10 feet apart, whatever they want, and they will have some connectivity down there. I don't know exactly where those hotspots are, but Enterprising Latinas is online. They're working from home. So we could find that out and post it, or you could go to their website and see where they are. The family resource centers are all operational, but they're not functioning in the traditional way. So what you have with them currently is they've all got a sign out front that says call them. They will come out to your car and they will take down what your needs are. If you're a member, you have to be a member of the Family Resource Center. So, and they can look at what those needs are, either refer you or look at meeting those needs themselves. So there were about 36,000 people through the resource centers last year alone. All of our programs served about 200,000 people in Hillsborough County last year. And as I said earlier, most of them are operational. If you go to the Children's Board website and Facebook page, you'll see a host of things that parents can do with children to keep them learning. And you will also find all sorts of options to watch learning videos and that sort of thing. We do have the summer passports still scheduled for about 400 kids during the summer. That's really high quality opportunities for them to learn. Those are for children that are associated with the Family Resource Center. I would urge everyone, families with children, to become a member. It's all free of the Resource Center when this settles down. And then we also have summer programming that we fund that we anticipate will still go on, and that is high quality, and literacy is part of each one of those programs. It's really based on 6 components, and it's arts, literacy, character education, learning through teamwork, 2 others that I can't think of right now, but it's really a nice opportunity for your children not to experience that summer slide.
Got it. Got it. Ms. Holt, we have people who are family members of loved ones who are right now in the jails or the juvenile detention center with our kids. If someone wants to visit, one of their loved ones in jail while they're waiting for court, I mean, how is this affecting them, and what's your office doing to help support those people?
Well, what I'm going to have to do is separate them out. For the juveniles, the juvenile detention center is totally shut down for any type of visitation with family members. They are still allowing us as the attorneys to go into the center if we find a need to do so. But family members, their only contact with their youth is going to be through telephone calls. Depending on the population of the detention center, it's at least 3 times a week. If the population is low enough, they'll bump that up to about 4. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, on the other hand, has also stopped in-person type of visitation. And they don't have people coming into the jail to use the video visitation either. But for a small fee, what they can do is they can do a remote video visitation with their loved ones in the Hillsborough County Jail. They're allowed, the inmates are there, the clients are there. They're allowed phone calls. Again, there's a fee. And obviously, because of all the restrictions that have been put in place at this time during COVID-19, the Sheriff's Office is at least providing 2 free phone calls for 5 minutes each per week to our clients. So the access is obviously limited to some extent. There's tremendous safeguards that have been put in place at the Hillsborough County Jail in order to screen when someone is being arrested and booked in. And if there's any type of flu type of symptoms or anything of that sort, the individuals are being placed in a different location away from the general population. So it seems right now that we have some communication. Things are in a safe environment. The detention center here in Hillsborough County has not had any type of upgrades, as you know, for a significant number of years. And so doing video visitation there has not worked out very well. We're able to do our videos for the courtroom. And so it seems to me, I agree with Ms. Stewart, who has indicated that this is probably going to be around for a long time. These restrictions are going to be in place for a long time. Our office is going to try to work with the Department of Juvenile Justice and with the major out at the detention center to try and loan them some equipment where we can perhaps set up video visitation for parents with their children. Because even though the child is only there for 21 days, that's what everybody thinks. The reality of it is we actually have children right now in the detention center that are being held there because they're awaiting placement to a program. We just learned today that not only is the Department of Corrections restricting movement from county jails to the prison system, but detention centers are being restricted from moving children into their programs that they might be being placed in. So if we're going to do this for the next 4, 5, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I think it's important for us to set up the technology so that families can have contact with their children. Number one, it's the right thing to do. It's the humane thing to do. But more importantly, the anxiety level that our youth are feeling, as well as our families are feeling, as Mr. Warren indicated, is high for everyone right now. And as you know, there's a teaching element also at the detention center. So we think that we can use equipment that exists. And we're going to work hopefully with the school system to assist us. If we can't use separate equipment, can we find a way to at least allow the school system's equipment to be used in some way? Haven't made that contact yet, but Cindy knows I'll call her, obviously. And then the other thing, obviously, for us is, as Mr. Warren indicated, we really are trying very hard to identify the right cases that we can try to resolve in a quick way. We also are moving our clients forward by having evaluations conducted during this time period. Baker Act proceedings are also growing at this point. We're able to do that through video hearings also. We're able to receive records electronically. None of our systems are slowing down with the exception of really you can't have trials occurring right now. And we're not resolving cases at the speed that we would have or at the high level that we would have, but we're able to at least in some way prep for the future, take the depositions, have experts talk to our clients. And in reality right now, every single one of our mental health experts are able to video conference with our clients. The Sheriff's Office has given us direct access also for our experts. And so for me, I think that we're in a good position to try and maintain some sense of good humanity towards our clients, good humanity to the public and to the family, and at the same time, trying to resolve cases as we move along the way.
Mr. Warren, a two-part question and almost somewhat loaded. You mentioned earlier how your office is looking at the types of cases that you're prosecuting, and you're trying to help keep people safe with it. Some lower level offenses you're not even looking at prosecuting. But what is your office doing with the Sheriff's Office, Tampa Police Department, Temple Terrace, and Plant City, their police districts, to enforce some of these guidelines that have been put in place? We know that there was recently we had the issue with the pastor here. I mean, what is now being seen as too extreme from what you're hearing out in the community? Talk to us more about what your office is doing, and then how do you determine which cases you decide not to prosecute, and how, if you decide not to prosecute, how are you working with the public defender's office and moving things forward?
Well, first, let me address the issue about how we're enforcing the social distancing rules. And our law enforcement partners are on the ground on this. They're the ones tasked with going out and making sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I think the Hillsborough County, the emergency policy group, was extremely prudent and smart to make it, arrest and prosecution as a last resort. The goal here is not to punish people because they step over the line. The goal here is to get people to fall into line, to follow best practices. And we've been having those conversations with our law enforcement partners. The idea that we're just going to arrest people because they're not doing what they're supposed to, that's not at all what we're doing. The case with the pastor was an aberration, because with a lot of our houses of worship, we had conversations, my office, the sheriff's office, talking with those leaders to say, hey, here's what you can be doing. Let's make it work so that we can keep our communities healthy, that we can practice social distancing. With that pastor, he said, I'm not going to do any of those things. He put us in a situation where, to protect not only the health of his parishioners, but everyone they could come in contact with, we felt like we had to actually use the coercive factor of the criminal justice system to go ahead and arrest him and to file charges. But we are still promoting compliance. That is what the goal is here. And we are extremely optimistic from what we've seen that people are doing the right thing. We need to keep spreading the word of how important it is to flatten the curve, to be responsible about social distancing. That's how we're going to get through this. Your other question was about how we're picking and choosing these cases. Our priority is always one of public safety. So right now, there's no public safety interest that is served by arresting people for low-level misdemeanors and then putting them into an already overcrowded jail. I applaud the sheriff for taking steps to reduce the jail population. Our chief judge made the absolute right decision to give more flexibility to the sheriff's office at the jail for releasing people, RORing them, as we say, without having to post a bond. We're doing what we can to keep people out of the system. And then in terms of the cases that we're still making decisions on about how we go forward, we're looking at cases where we have people who've been in jail for a longer period of time than they would get if they've been convicted, and they haven't even been convicted yet. Those are the types of cases that we're just going to dismiss. If someone is looking at a time served sentence of 1 week, for example, and they've already been sitting in jail for 1 week, we're not going to insist that we get a conviction out of it. That person's already been punished more than they would have if they've been convicted. Let's go ahead and dismiss the charges, get that person back to their home, make sure they're doing everything they can to practice responsible social distancing so that we can get through this as a community together.
You know, a follow-up to that, and this is for you and Mrs. Holt. So with the new stay-at-home order that was listed, issued out and then kind of modified by the governor, locally, how does this affect, people have asked questions, fishing or congregating at homes, visitation at the detention centers and jails, and then, we just had the church, but how are we really working with the faith-based community and church gathering and those things? Really, what does it mean for me as a person in my neighborhood if I just really wanted to do something? We're all getting stir crazy about staying home all the time, but I mean, what are we really doing to help these folks understand what they can and cannot do?
Yeah, I mean, I've had calls the past 2 days, conference calls with faith-based leaders talking exactly about that. How do ministers and pastors and rabbis and imams continue to provide those services to people who want it, who want spirituality in a time of uncertainty without running afoul of the law? And that's why really common sense is prevailing here. Common sense as dictated by the public health experts and the scientists. And so what we're trying to do is, if you want to go fishing, you're asking me about fishing, fantastic. And the governor even said it this afternoon. If you can't go fishing though with 50 people, I mean, that's the difference. And so can you have a gathering at your house? Well, the reality is that you shouldn't be interfacing and socializing with people outside of your household, except to the extent that you need to. We all have to go to the grocery store still. We all have to go to the pharmacy still. Some of us still have to go to work. Some of us still have to provide these essential services. Those are places where, as a community, we have to keep interacting. In all the other places, we should do our best to minimize that interaction. So if you want to go for a bike ride or a jog, or you want to go outside and do jumping jacks and howl at the moon, that's fine. Just do it with a small group of people. Don't do it in a confined space. Maintain your 6-foot distance. Wash your hands, don't cough on each other. Basic common sense about health. And that's what's the key here. It's not about what people can be prosecuted for. It's about what's actually promoting the best health practices.
Okay, Ms. Holt?
I don't need to add anything really to what Mr. Warren just said, but I will say that, when we think about people that are essential services and we're thinking about, a certain group of people, we usually focus on, the doctors, or we focus on law enforcement. Both of our agencies are considered essential services. And so therefore, neither one of us has the ability to say we don't want to be involved in the solution of these situations that we're in. I think about all the people that are really at the grocery store, trying to make our life better at these locations, the people that are still doing the services for people that have mental health challenges. I mean, when you think about what a great community we're in, where we really come together and where the focus really is can we get the majority of people to be able to follow all these guidelines that have been set in place, keep our world going forward in a way that really allows those of us who can to sustain our lives. And to me, I'm with everyone else that we're going to end up in a better place. It's just a very challenging time. We're going to get through this. Our community is a strong community. And for me, I haven't heard one word about, hey, let's punish people for anything that they're trying to do. What we've heard is, how can we convince people to take this serious? How can we convince people to stay at home if they're in a position to do so, and still know that at the end of the day, we're going to have to come back into the system, and the system is going to have to continue on, no matter which one you're in. And so, for me, I'm having to do a long-term strategic type of thought process. I'm very fortunate that I have great partners that help us do that. We've got some great judges that have been coming in and allowing us to do some really critical work that still needs to be occurring. And so I want our listeners to know that this is a tough time, but at the end of all of this, we're going to be a good community and a strong community because we really do care about each other. That's becoming very, very clear.
Ms. Stewart, we just saw the broadcast yesterday. The school board had a meeting and the discussion came up about part-time workers within the district. Can you tell us what happened as a result of that, and how is this going to affect some of the families?
So I did get some clarification from the superintendent around part-time workers. He put out some information yesterday. Let me see if I can pull it up here. I was trying to print it and I was not successful in printing it for you. So all of our part-time employees right now, the people who are not on the radar are people who are part-time and not benefited. So in other words, they're not working for us consistently. So that would be our substitute teachers and our hourly employees. Those people have not been woven into whether or not they're going to get pay. Our permanent employees and our permanent part-time employees are still getting paid through the end of the year. So all of our full-time employees, our full-time teachers, student nutrition, transportation, all of those divisions are still getting paid. The governor has assured us at this point that our budget for the current year, 1920, will not be adjusted, that they're not going to pull any money back. It is the upcoming year's budget that we are very concerned about. There were a lot of things on the table legislatively that included, for example, teacher pay raises. I'm not sure where that's going to go, and he has indicated that he is not going to sign anything until we get a little bit further into this. So that's a little troubling. The district has moved to a hiring freeze. Presently, as of yesterday, only essential classroom employees and teachers will be hired at this point for the upcoming school year. So until we see what that budget looks like, hopefully in the next few weeks, we have moved to a complete hiring freeze for all employees except for essential classroom teachers. But as far as I got some clarification, and I can add it, the document here later on the Facebook Live to make sure that people understand where we are with our hourly employees.
Got it. Kelly, how are some of your funded agencies? Are they currently modifying some of their service models or contracts to, one, keep to their contractual requirements that they have for the year, even though now they have limited capacity, and then still provide?
Oh, excuse me, Freddie. Their structural requirements will change to meet the basic needs of the community. So as I said earlier, they should all be surveying and have been directed to survey their population base to see that those needs are met. And it's just not one and done. It's continually through this process. And we really want to pay close attention to the data we get back from here, because at what point did food become the issue? At what point did medication become the issue? So we are going to track this when it's all said and done. So we have a timeline for the next crisis that happens in the Tampa Bay area. I got the initial results back from one agency last night. They surveyed 158 participants. 30 were jobless. Now I've got to drill down on that. I don't know if they were chronically unemployed prior to this, or were they furloughed? Did their business close where they worked? 27% were concerned about health issues, which I'm a little surprised it is not more than that. 20% don't have April's rent. So that we already know that's going to be an issue, but we also know that there are a lot of players in that space that can jump in there and help with that. 18% didn't have technology for their children. 15% didn't have money to pay utilities. 13% didn't have medication. It goes on. 5% were struggling with food. Now we have seen a lot of supports go out for food already. So we know that's going to be an issue. Tomorrow I have a meeting with the funders from Hillsborough County. So that'll be all the foundation people. So we can lay out where our lane is so that we don't duplicate services. We do have an emergency line item budget for the Children's Board. We will increase that if our funded agencies know that their needs are greater than what those dollars are. So 304 early learning centers have closed across Hillsborough County. That's about a third of their capacity. So we want to keep people working. So when we're indicating, especially those essential function people, we want them to be available for the public. So we have a plan to reopen some of those centers close to where the need is at some point in time when it's indicated. There's no need right now with the healthcare population, but we anticipate as it continues and this becomes a lengthy crisis that we will see that healthcare providers are going to need some supports with early learning care for their children.
You know, Ms. Holt and Mr. Warren, you know, we know that everyone keeps saying that, you know, we know that people are just, everyone's tired already, but a lot of people are concerned about they're not working now. A lot of people have been laid off. A lot of people can't go back to work. And we know that when we see high unemployment numbers come up, we see potential crime and or violence to occur. Your office is working diligently, both of them, to keep people moving the cases forward, seeing what cases you need to prosecute and or support. But what are we doing to kind of almost be at the ready should we see an increase in crime because people aren't working and people may become desperate? I mean, what are we doing to address the possibility of that happening?
I don't think we're doing enough right now. Freddie, to be honest, I think we're still trying to figure out how to slow down the coronavirus and not thinking about what's next. And that's not necessarily the wrong approach. The problem in front of us is how do we handle this situation to protect people's health while minimizing disruption to our economy? This is going to displace a lot of people. It already has. The economic impact is going to be devastating. Hopefully it's going to be short-lived. And all the experts have said and all the guidance we've received is the faster we can flatten the curve, the quicker we're going to escape this, which means we'll get back to our normal lives, back to our robust economy here. But you're absolutely right. This is going to have reverberations down the road. The ripple effect in our criminal justice system will be felt. Hopefully it won't be very pronounced, but one of the biggest factors influencing crime is the economy. And as the economy slows down and people fall on hard times, unfortunately, they're going to turn to not just crime, but coping with it in not the best ways, whether it's substance abuse or, as I mentioned earlier, domestic violence tends to increase. We have to be on the ready for that. There's no silver bullet solution to fixing that. We just need to be prepared and appreciate that the consequences of what happens today does have that ripple effect down the road, especially in the criminal justice system.
Just hope.
Well, and Freddie, one of the things, that's why it's important for us to really continue to work on a very diligent basis, really all day long on as many cases as we can, because as Mr. Warren says, there is going to be a ripple effect. And, you know, I remember Chief Dugan saying, hey, the call outs are lower, but the homicide part of it is troubling. And so, you know, Mr. Warren and I are continuing to stay focused on those types of cases also, so that our offices can hopefully, you know, handle whatever may come in our direction. I have faith and confidence in watching our mayor and in watching the leadership from the Board of County Commission, as well as the leadership of other municipalities. I am hopeful that everyone will realize that now that we've got our stay safe at home order, now that the governor has done what he has done, that we can now shift some of our city employees and some of our county employees into assisting people who may not have access or may not have the ability to work through the stimulus package, through the small business loans and things of that sort. I hope that we'll start to see a shift of using our own home resources to access this money that is going to be available for people. If someone like Kelly continues to say, okay, now we're going to have to shift here to try and help people. That's what I think we need to do next, because the stay at home, stay safe orders, they're in place. I think people, you know, I see it's eerie when you look out into the streets right now, but now it's time to shift into helping people get access to whether it's financial resources, living resources. I think shutting down evictions and foreclosures for a period of time is going to be something that will be helpful. It will allow people to adjust and hopefully get through these difficult times. The people that are losing their jobs, for me, I'm concerned for those people that are the restaurants, the small businesses. Are they going to be able to stay closed for the period of time that we're talking about now and come back? I think, when Kelly was reading off the statistical information from a survey, most people that I handle and am engaged with and interface with and interact with, have economic challenges, true economic challenges. And we're going to have to find a way to help those individuals. I have faith that law enforcement will not only be doing what they're doing now to minimize the impact on the system, but I think hopefully in the future, they'll understand we need some other time too. We need a recovery period too. I have confidence that Mr. Warren will use his discretion that he has to get us through a recovery period also. So that type of leadership I think is important, and I'm grateful that I'm living in a community where I think we will all do that.
The last question is for everyone. This has been somewhat traumatizing for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're in West Tampa or West Chase. It doesn't matter if you're in the Palms or if you're in Progress Village. We're all feeling the mental and emotional impact of this. Cindy, certainly with the school district, you have access to mental health. Well, parents have access to mental health resources. There's links on there. Kelly, certainly we have the resource directory guide that's out there. But what do you think we should be doing more, everyone, each one of you, if you could answer, to help with the mental health aspect of this?
Well, you've got to meet people's basic needs. I mean, you can't expect for people to be stabilized when their basic needs aren't met. I'm extremely concerned about renters and them not having a safe and stable home. There are things that are basic to anyone's quality of life that we've got to make sure we meet. And that if that's food, if that's medication, we have got to have for our families and our families and their children, we have got to have a stable home for them to be safe in. So I think we have to make sure that we shift our resources when the time comes to make sure that happens, because any family on the street is not going to be in a good situation at all. So as I said before, we're fluid and we're watching, what time this hits, what the needs are. And right now for food, we've got to do some creative things, whether it be drive-through like the school system Cindy was talking about, whether it be drive and drop, whatever it is. But we need to make sure that everything cannot be, by the way we used to do it. It's got to change, and we got to think out of the box to get those services to the people.
I would agree with Kelly. There's been a lot of focus on feeding, especially right now. I mean, this has been, 2 weeks right now. This is not the hard time. 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in is when we're really going to start to see families needing things. And there's been a lot of focus around big corporations and even local making large donations. And I'm grateful to Feeding Tampa Bay. I'm very grateful for that. But that's where everyone's focus is. And we're not thinking about, our 4 zip codes that we at Safe and Sound focus on and what that looks like when a family can't afford rent and they're going to be evicted. I mean, what are we doing? What are policymakers doing at this point to make sure that doesn't happen? Because that's the next thing that's going to happen, is we're going to have a massive amount of people who are not only can't provide food for their family, but now they're going to be on the street because we're going to have evictions happening. We haven't really focused on that. I've seen
Cindy, can
massive
I add
numbers.
something? Mm-hmm. Can I add something to that? I mean, we've got to be able to shift some of these dollars for that rent, because if you've got 2 months where they put a moratorium on evictions, when they take it off, you're still 2 months behind on rent. So, I mean, we've got to think about the long-term effects this has on family. How are we destabilizing them and stabilizing them? So the moratorium on evictions is great, but what happens when it's lifted?
Yeah.
I agree. So I think for us as policymakers, I think we need to get to the policymakers who can handle some of those situations and some of those policies that are in place, and start talking about what it looks like when we're 30 days into this, 40 days into this, because those are the kids I worry about the most. The kids who are They might be getting the meals, but they're not getting 3 square meals. And what happens when those families who live month to month are now on the street and don't have anywhere to go? And we're, obviously we're not going to encourage people to start moving in with family. That's going to happen though. So I hate to see that be the part of it, but I am worried most about our 4 zip codes of high crime that we talk about at Safe and Sound. I have schools in those zip codes, and I'm worried about those kids being out for extended periods of time and then potentially being on the street. So we haven't really talked about that very much in this community. Everyone's feeding everyone, and that's fantastic. I'm glad to see that people recognize the level of poverty that exists in Hillsborough County, but the homelessness or the about to be increase in homelessness is not something we've talked about at all.
We actually have a question that came in and it speaks just to that. So anyone who wants to pitch in, we know that the city of Tampa has a tent city project that's being lifted up, but what is being done for the homeless community? Shelter, medical, mental health services, and or assistance if those individuals commit crimes. So that's a free for all for anyone that wants to hop in.
Well, I think at least for the criminal justice piece of it, let me just real quickly do that, and then we can let somebody else take on. In the criminal justice system, if we identify at the front end that this is because of homelessness or mental health issues, I can tell you up front, that person is not just going to sit in jail. We're going to interject ourselves in some way. Our case managers are still working. We have, as I indicated to you, we have volunteer doctors that are willing to assist our clients, whether it be at the jail or even at home. They're willing to interface and engage with our clients. So from that standpoint, I'm comfortable that if we're identifying the problem there at the front end in the jail, we're going to find a way to help that person. The case managers are going to continue to follow them. It's not a matter of just getting them out of jail. We're going to assist them in getting the services. From my understanding of the tent city, there's access not only to food, but there's access to medical care, and there's access to the mental health aspect of this also. So if in fact what I've been hearing about Tent City is accurate, what we're really talking about though is once we get through this hump that we're in right now, this 45 or 60 days, whatever it may be, what's going to be the follow through at that point? I don't think there's anyone that's engaging with you tonight, Freddie, that doesn't realize that in Tallahassee, at least, I expect a special session, and I expect that the budget that was passed will be modified tremendously, and that there will be a refocusing of dollars. And I have prepared our office for that. And I can refer them back to when the recession hit. That's what happened. There were a lot of reductions, a lot of reallocation of resources. And I think that everyone understands that this community, this state is going to need the intervention for housing and for employment, no doubt about it, as well as the wraparound services.
As we're coming down to last 10 minutes. Those folks who are watching online, if you have any other questions, please feel free to send those out and we can ask those questions. We're going to be doing several of these. We want to keep people connected and understanding what's happening at the policy and community level. So as we kind of close, and Andrew, I'll let you start. I mean, what else should we be focusing on? I mean, we know what your offices are doing now, but how can the community plug into your office efforts to help, 1, flatten the curve, 2, keep people safe, and then 3, help us move forward? Andrew, I'll let you start it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to make sure that we are continuing to spread the word about what responsible social distancing looks like. And you can go through some of the zip code that Safe and Sound Hillsborough serves, and you can see groups of kids who don't have anywhere to be, who don't have parental supervision during the day to be doing the virtual schooling at home. Not only are those kids missing out on the educational opportunities that have shifted from a school environment to a home environment, not only are they running the risk of getting into trouble potentially, but they're also not practicing safe social distancing. And so we need these community groups like Safe and Sound Hillsborough, like the Children's Board and all the agencies that it work with to continue to work to coordinate with mothers and fathers and neighborhood associations and say, hey, we really need to be doing these things, because the better we do it, the faster we flatten the curve, the quicker we're going to get out of this. And we've talked about the broader impact that this is going to have, not just on the criminal justice system, but on our economy, on homelessness, on healthcare, which we really haven't talked about today, and how that disproportionately impacts people without good healthcare, which is our poor and financially disadvantaged communities. There's a lot that's going to come on the back end of this, which is why we have to be paying attention to those things, but doing everything we can in the present to flatten the curve to move past the situation we're in now.
Okay. Kelly?
I think we're going to concentrate on stabilization of the families, because the last thing we want is to add to the bigger problem. I think THHI, I saw the homeless numbers yesterday, up until this point has done a wonderful job in decreasing those numbers, looking at comparables from 20 to 19, fiscal year 19. So I think we need to concentrate our energy, our dollars on the stabilization of those people that this will cause instability in, and making sure they can get back to work, they can get back to their routines, the children can get back to whatever they need to do to be up to speed when they get to school next year. But PHHI, I think, needs to be at some of these tables so they can explain what they've done to reduce those homeless numbers. So I would encourage Safe and Sound to pull them in next time.
Absolutely. Cindy?
So I think we're going to continue to try and learn more about what e-learning looks like, and continue to educate both, not just our teachers and our students, but families. We have started a parent group that Parent University is actually going to come online, hopefully in the next few weeks, and be able to engage parents around things that they can be doing to help their students. Expectations need to be lowered way down on what is happening. We're encouraging kids to have fun, to get outside, to take advantage of the fact that our streets are really empty. Go ride a bike, go for a walk. So I think we will continue to encourage that. But I agree with Julie. I anticipate a special session. I anticipate a drastic cut in certain things on that budget. And I think education is going to be along those lines. And I'm not sure what that looks like, especially with all the e-learning going on. I mean, we're being very successful because we have to, but how does that translate to the legislature right now? That if we can do it online, you know, what do we need to be building new schools for? And what do we need to be putting kids in classrooms for as long as we do for that many days? So it's a very interesting time. I do want to give a shout out to some people who were on. I saw Representative Edna Rain was on watching us tonight, and Stanley Gray. And I want to give a shout out to our superintendent, our new superintendent, whose first day was March 23rd, and he has taken on this task of a brand new district. And he was a superintendent before, so no doubt he knows the role of superintendency. But to walk into a district this size compared to the district he came from, not knowing many people and not knowing what his staff or cabinet members or employees were capable of, and asking them to lift what he's asked them to lift has been really amazing. He has gone nonstop. He has been extremely communicative with the community and with employees and with the school board members around what is happening and how it's happening, and is really listening to what people need. So I am grateful that he is here, and so glad that we hired him at the time that we did. I mean, that we're not still in that transition phase.
So.
Well, Freddie, first of all, thank you for doing what you did tonight and for engaging all of us. You know, I want to give a big shout out to all of our leaders in our community that really have really come together and have really worked through a lot of the difficult issues. Cindy, I think that there are going to be a lot of parents that are going to be probably writing a lot of great letters that this has been good, what you've done, but that in-person teaching really is important. A lot of kids take virtual school and online classes, but there are just some things that people really need to have the face-to-face. And I will tell you that I think that's the number one thing that our kids miss right now. I miss my friends. I miss seeing my friends. I miss seeing my teacher. You can't online that part of life. And we want to grow our children to be, you know, able to socially interact. We don't really want it just face screening and things of that sort. So I think you're going to have a lot of support in that. I do think we're all going to have to tighten our belts a lot. But I'm looking forward to ensuring that through Safe and Sound, Freddie, and through all of your work and your staff's work and the leadership of your council, that we will have a good impact and a good effect on the 4 zip codes that we have taken on, that we have wanted to help and empower. So thank you for everything that you do, Freddie. We can't say enough good things about you and Samicia and Rose. And so keep up the good work, everyone.
All right. Well, thank you guys for
Freddie.
participating. Thank you for those of you that watched. If you have any questions after this, please send it to Safe and Sound Hillsborough. We're going to have many more of these sessions as we try to make sure that our community is connected. So thank you, everyone. You all have a safe and sound night, and keep washing your hands.
Thanks, Freddie.
Thank you, Freddie.
All right. How do I end this?